while we wait for the projector colleagues, I have a few slides just to sort of run through the main principles of the investment case, give a little bit of the history of how we started working on this and the directions that we're going with it. In general, why these two agencies? I think it's quite clear why WHO would be involved in doing this work, because it's a really central issue to the health of countries. And UNDP have become interested in this because of the significant social and economic impacts of these diseases on developing countries, and likewise on the commercial, social, and economic determinants of these diseases on the health. So it works both ways, and we've, over the last year or two, established a good working partnership between UNDP and WHO and a good division of labor, so that we each have our own roles and bring in our own colleagues from different parts of our organizations. We, UNDP, generally are interested in trying to promote multi-sectoral engagement, and we find that these are really quintessentially multi-sectoral issues. It's not something that you can say to the health sector, here, solve these diseases, fix them, and then it'll get done. It really requires the commitment and the engagement of a range of sectors, from agriculture to finance to economy to trade to youth, social protection. Really, we've got a list of probably 20 different points of entry with other engagement with other sectors. We also need to bring in not just government stakeholders, but civil society, academia, the private sector, a lot of really differing points of view and different interests that are really fueling these diseases. So we're trying to take the wide view and use the investment case as a first look at what the impact is, what the best actions are to mitigate that, what the cost of those actions are, and what the benefit of implementing them would be. So we're not looking to make it the most academically rigorous, peer-reviewed product you're ever going to pin your career hopes on. We're trying to keep it focused on advocacy, keeping it generic enough and simple enough that non-economist audience will understand it and be able to act on it. We don't think it's going to be used for specific budgeting purposes that say, here's exactly what we expect the impact of this to be. We present them with a menu of what the overall projections would be. So really, we think of the main audience for this not as being within ministries of health, but being more likely within a ministry of finance or planning, someone who's making these allocation decisions. The role of Ministry of Health, for the most part, would be the owners of it. We present it when we finish it, and then we hand it over to the Ministry of Health. They then own it. They have the models, they have the methodology. They're then able, as more data becomes available, to iterate it and go 2 years later, here's some new data, let's run the numbers again, see what's changed, what have we done. So it's not something that should require extensive UN expert support ongoing. Just we try to use it as a capacity development tool for ministries of health. I can speak briefly on country demand. Alexei hinted at it earlier. We're at now 46 governments who have officially requested to receive an investment case, either on NCDs generally or on tobacco control specifically. We've sort of lumped them together in terms of demand because it may not make much sense to separate them too much. The countries are in every WHO region, relatively evenly distributed, so it's not just a European issue, it's not just an African issue, it's a global issue. We are set to, as Alexei mentioned, we've been working in 7 or 8 countries on investment cases so far. We've set to do another dozen or so in the next 9 months, and then we hope to show some of these results, find more interest in it, get more funding, and complete any country that wants it done. We're focusing, for the most part, on low and middle income countries. Shokri and I were working in Saudi Arabia, which is a little bit different situation. So we're open to other countries, but our focus, for the most part, will be in low and middle income countries. The mandate for the work, the Interagency Task Force on NCDs has a clear mandate from ECOSOC to work on these issues and to convene the various expertise of other UN agencies to contribute to it. Also, the Conference of the Parties of the Framework Convention on Tobacco Control have had several decisions in the last 2 meetings that they've had, one in Moscow and then a following one last year in Delhi, asking UNDP, WHO, and the World Bank specifically to look at helping countries make that economic case, specifically on tobacco, but also looking more broadly at NCDs. So there's a very mandate, but our main mandate that we're responding to is demand from countries. They're saying they want help with this, and it's our responsibility to make sure that they are able to do it. Current partners, we've been working with together closely with our regional offices, with Jill and with Euro. We also have had extensive conversations with the World Bank on the methodology and on plans, and we hope to join forces with them in a few weeks, really, in Kenya for the first one. And then we hope it'll be essentially a tripartite activity going forward, but the role of the World Bank is crucial long-term to this as well. We so far have worked with a range of independent consultants as our economists to play the role of the lead economist. And when we get the projector, I'll go through the sort of the roles and our own internal division of labor. But we think that model works pretty well. We've had both independent consultants as that role, and then also institutional arrangements where we worked with a group called Research Triangle Institute, a group of economists based in the US. There's pluses and minuses to both. It's when you have a big group you're working with, it's easy to, on short notice, send someone out to a country when dates change, as they inevitably do. But with individual consultants, we're able, I think, to get a depth that we don't always have otherwise. So this is the model we're looking for with this project. Let's see, placing within the project was one of the objectives, and that shouldn't take too long. It's quite a short discussion there, so we can cross off one of the objectives in the next minute. Essentially, UNDP and WHO have a joint program on what we call NCD governance, which are 5 aspects of how countries can really get the foundation together in terms of their policies to address these issues. It wouldn't make much sense for a country like Sierra Leone to say, okay, we want to do plain packaging for tobacco products, because there's just a loose sequence of steps to get you to that point. So we want to make sure that the countries have all these fundamentals and they have a foundation in place. And we're using the term NCD governance as the organizing factor there. We have identified 5 components to this project. Of those, NCD investment cases have been listed first. They also have the strongest demand, so that's where we've put the vast majority of our energies recently, energy and finances. So we are starting with the investment cases, and it's meant to be a sort of 5-step process to get the countries finished up on their governance issues. First one is investment cases. The second one looks at how countries coordinate themselves. And the idea behind the investment cases also is this multi-sectorality. And this is really important for coordination as well. It can't just be the normal people who are from the health sector who have all the responsibility to solve these problems that are beyond the scope of the health sector. So we need to make sure that there's regular, appropriate level, funded, sustainable engagement of these other sectors and these other stakeholders. So we need Ministry of Finance to have a seat at the table and to be there. We need to have agriculture if you're in a country that's growing tobacco or has unhealthy food. We need private sector representatives in some form or fashion. We're not going to advocate for working closely with tobacco industry, but the role of private sector has been key in some other countries we worked in. The third component is on municipalities. The general nature of the UN is, of course, to work with our member states, which are national governments, as our main counterpart. But we recognize that for these issues and these diseases, a lot of the action is happening at subnational level. There's a lot of space for strong policies that municipalities can implement, and we need to make sure that they have the tools to push those forward. The fourth one is, how do you situate these responses to these diseases within the Sustainable Development Agenda? So within Agenda 2030, there's a range of relevant targets and goals, and there's processes, and there's momentum, and there's commitment for those. how do we make sure that these diseases have a prominent place, not just implementation of the specific NCD and tobacco control targets, but how do NCDs affect hunger, education, all these other things. So making sure that NCDs are central to that agenda, or the fourth component. And the fifth one is, once you've got all these things together, you're ready to really then tackle some concrete risk factor policy changes. And so that's what we aim to help with at the end of that fifth component. The Russians have been very generous and supportive, and have bought into the joint program, and are really the first leaders in making sure that we're able to roll it out globally. So we're excited about the opportunity to start with the investment cases, but we do have broader ambitions to have a more broad-based approach, and we want to bring in other partners as well. So that's, I think, without the slides I was able to cover. We can go back when we get the projector later and just emphasize some of the slides, look at the team composition. We'll look more in depth at the products that the investment case consists of. We'll look at the processes, how we go about delivering it, and we can get into more depth. But I think I'll hand over now to Jeremy to give a quick overview on investment cases.